The railroad service has been struggling over the years, but has seen a bit of a turnaround in recent months. Also, will Trump's trade tariffs affect performance going forwards? I'm Fiona Singh-Cotter at StoneX, and to discuss this and more, I'm joined by VP of Rail Logistics, Shaun Meiners. Thank you for joining me, Shaun.
Thank you for having me.
So, just to start with, give me a brief overview of the US railroads.
Yeah, the North American railroad system spans roughly 161,000 miles of track, and they haul roughly 1.5 billion tons of raw materials and finished products annually. So if you kind of look at it geographically on a map, the railroads are made up of roughly six Class One railroads, which are defined as having operating revenue of roughly $900 million or more annually. So if you look west of the Mississippi, you've got the BNSF and the UP. You got the east of the Mississippi, you've got the Norfolk Southern and the CSXT, and the northern corridor that spans into Canada, and then really has a line that runs north and south through the Midwest. You've got the Canadian National and the Canadian Pacific Kansas City. These Class One railroads account for roughly 67% of the freight miles and 94% of the revenue paid annually. Along with these six Class One railroads, there's also roughly 600 regional and shortline railroads. So these shortline railroads really support more regionally, linking shippers, receivers to really to Class Ones. And many of these short lines are held by larger holding companies. You've got Watco that owns roughly 45. Genesee Wyoming Railroad has 122, and then Omnitrax with 25 railroads. These are, like I said, these are much shorter and handle about 1 in 5 carloads that move.
Okay, excellent. No, great for building a picture there for us. So also, tell us a little bit about their performance in recent years.
Yeah, so they've definitely had some headwinds, some challenges over the last couple of years. I look back and I think it all really started with the pandemic. In 2020, from January to May, you saw the railroads lost roughly 40% of their business in just a short period of time. So as they're losing this business, the same thing, they're going out there and they're laying off or furloughing employees. Furloughed roughly 10,000. We hit January or hit June, and the volumes came back and then some in the next 2 months. So as the railroads went back to recall some of these furloughed employees or try to rehire, they found it really quickly that a lot of these employees had found different work, and not only different work that maybe they enjoyed better, as it was maybe in a climate controlled e-commerce warehouse, set hours. So it was a lot easier for those guys, and really struggled to get people back. And this labor shortage really went through roughly 2024. And then in 2022, you had the strikes, the U.S. strikes. I call it a strike, and I'm not sure that it really was a strike, because of the administration at the time forced the unions to accept the latest collective bargaining agreements, and there wasn't a strike. But what the biggest deal was the 9 months or 12 months leading up to it, where you had upset employees, you had railroads that are having record years, and you had employees that hadn't seen a raise in a number of years. They had very little sick time or paid time off. So you just had an unhappy workforce that really led to further degradation of the service product. East Palestine in 2023, you had a derailment. It was a pretty big deal. It seemed like for 2-3 weeks you couldn't turn on the TV without seeing the plume of smoke rolling off from some rail cars. It was a 149 car train. 38 of those cars derailed. 20 of those were carrying hazardous material. Like I said, a fire broke out. There was no fatalities or injuries, but it was really just the perception that the media put on it. So you had the railroads that everyone kind of took a step back, really focused on safety, didn't want to be that next railroad that was on the news because of a derailment. So wanted to make sure their perception stayed well. So they just kind of slowed things down. And then you had the Canadian rail strike in 2024. It was very similar to the U.S. strike, where they didn't actually strike, but it was a time leading up to it, and then the Canadian government intervening and getting involved to make sure that they got back to work and they didn't lose any service.
And things are starting to turn a corner. Are we seeing some improvements as we're heading into through 2025?
Yeah. The U.S. railroads, for the most part, U.S. and Canadian railroads are actually running really well. Performance continues to increase. I was at a conference last week in the NS at Norfolk Southern. Railroad was talking, and they're a year plus with their service metrics improving every month. you're going to have pockets. The CSX, they were talking about they still have some washouts from Hurricane Helene, where maybe some bridges and stuff like that. So you might have some pockets that they're seeing rough area, but for the most part, the U.S. and Canadian railroads are moving pretty well. You've got your Mexican railroads that been struggling a little bit. They've got the interchanges with the U.S. railroads that are currently embargoed, meaning they're metering the number of trains they can send on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Really, that's just so the FXE, the Ferromex, doesn't get overwhelmed like it did last year in 2024, where they just couldn't turn anything. So, for the most part, yeah, definitely turning well.
Yeah, and I guess then there's always Trump's trade tariffs. I mean, there's no escaping that confiscation. While it does feel like we're sort of past worst case scenario as far as trade tariffs are concerned, I think there's still plenty of uncertainty. How do you see tariffs affecting performance going forward?
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like they've really affected much today. Carload volumes are maybe down a little bit. Intermodal's still up versus last year, but I think the main concern is as the trade tariffs continue to get farther in, that we see some lose some intermodal volumes of shipments coming into the U.S., as well as turning around and maybe seeing some loss of maybe your ag exports that are because of reciprocal tariffs that are trying to export. So definitely we could see. I don't know that it hurts their service product. If anything, it may help increase that because I think there could be some volume lost.
Yeah. So I guess then, are there also any opportunities out there for shippers in today's environment?
Yeah, definitely. We see some with some of these, possible loss of volumes and just how the railroads running today. There's definitely railroads out there looking for incremental business with extra capacity, and then at the same time with that, there's improved and more reliable transit times because there's not as many cars on the railroads. We're advising customers. Some of our customers today is, hey, if you're looking at maybe building a new facility or upgrading or something, look at the railroads. The railroads are giving some advantageous rates to get some of this volume back onto the railroad to ensure some of the volume stays on the railroads. And at the same time, not only on the rate side, they're incentivizing some customers to continue to build on their line. So that's definitely a good thing. We're also advising customers to look at lanes that they're shipping on, maybe that they've looked at before, maybe new customers, new lanes that they're shipping on. How can they compete with truck, barge, other rail lines and stuff like that? That maybe bring that stuff to the railroad's attention right now, because again, these guys are looking for incremental business, and I think they're willing to do something. Kind of the last thing that I think see as an opportunity is transloading. So transloading really, what I look at there is it's the direct transfer from one mode of transportation to another. In this case, a lot of it's truck to rail or rail to truck. So we've got some customers that have talked to us in the past about they'd like to hit some other customers. Maybe they're out of geographical area for truck and it doesn't make as much sense, and they're only truck served. But with the number of transloads that have been built over the last 5 to 6 years, short lines that are helping with transloads and stuff like that, in a lot of cases, if an origin isn't served, we can put it on truck it 50, 60, sometimes less miles, transload it into a rail car and ship it onto a destination, or vice versa. If an origin is served, you can ship it at the destination, somewhere close to the destination. We usually transload it, get it on the truck for that end customer.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Shaun. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
For more videos like this, please do like and subscribe.